President Comrade Oscar Martinez, our ambassador from Cuba in India, uh, to uh, shower the Cuban knowledge of medicines and medical healthcare system.
Well, first of all, esteemed friends, I would like to thank the Indian host partners that had the idea of the commemorating the 1994th birth anniversary of the historical leader of the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro Ruz. Remembering Fidel, his thought and consequent practice is the best tribute we can pay 4 years after his physical disappearance. Fidel was the greatest exponent of the Cuban revolutionary process, who raised the international spirit and solidarity of Cubans to its maximum expression. This was demonstrated throughout his life and in the political program that he guided the revolutionary process to the truth in 1959 and later in the construction of a new society more just and humane. Fidel was questionless the leader with exceptional characteristic as a popular educator who achieved massive levels of politicization over the Cuban people for the understanding and assimilation of socialism in the concrete and specific condition of my country. For about 61 years of revolution that we precisely celebrate this year, there has been no historical event in our country where there is not present the legacy of Fidel and his war comrades, among whom the most outstanding are Raúl Castro, Camilo Cienfuegos, and Comandante Ernesto Che Guevara. Comandante Ernesto Che Guevara, as part of the revolutionary vanguard and partner of Fidel, contribute to with his thought and action to the construction of our society that was reflected in his written work, The Socialist Transition in Cuba under the condition of an underdevelopment country. Che, as you know, was the first guerrilla since the landing of Grandma Jad in 1956, the first guerrilla doctor. His experience visiting almost all Latin America countries in the 50s, first as a medical student and later as a doctor, was undoubtedly an important factor for his personally political formation as a revolutionary. Learning about the poverty, misery, hunger, and diseases in the region. I say that Comandante Che Guevara, as part of the revolutionary vanguard and partner of Fidel, contributed to, with his thought and action, to the construction of our society that was reflected in his written work, The Socialist Transition in Cuba under the condition of underdevelopment country. Che, as you know, was the first guerrilla doctor since the landing of Grandma Jad in 1956 in Cuba. His experience visiting almost all Latin American countries in the 50s, first as a medical student and later as a doctor, was undoubtedly an important factor for his personally political formation as a revolutionary, learning about the poverty, misery, hunger, and diseases in the Latin American region. Che contributed personally to the comprehensive health program organized by initiative of Fidel. He helped also by identifying the necessary behaviors of a new revolutionary doctor that later was base of norms for our medical personal practice. Simplicity, companionship, ethics, a humanistic and supportive vocation, solidarity in the remote and difficult region, and so on. The personal contact to its patient was a very important norm in the practice of our doctors. The health sector is not an exception from the role played by the Cuban leaders. We must remember that in Fidel's plea before the trial for the assault on the Moncada barracks on July the 26th, 1953, known as History Will Absolve Me, it is expressed the critical health status in Cuba, the ridiculous budget granted to this sector. Doctors were mainly concentrated in the capital. Equal was concentrated in Havana, most of the beds in hospital. And by the other side, there was almost no rural medicine service. The platform for strategic health developing from national health system was presented basically in the historical moment in 1953. In 1959, I mean before 1959, before the triumph of the revolution, we had a population of almost 6.5 million Cubans. And we had around 6,000 doctors. I said almost 30% of these doctors were concentrated, or more, were concentrated in Havana. After the revolution, as you know, 50% of these 6,000 doctors, they exodus to the United States. And we had to work with about 3,000 that were the professors and teachers for the new medical doctor that we need to form. Infant mortality was for 1959, 60% per thousand live birth of 1 year. Life expectancy was under 60 years. Sanitary hygienic symptoms dominated by curable disease. A single medical national school was available across the country. Selves during the guerrilla war, Fidel created a rudimentary health system in the liberated zone for elementary service. That was after a valuable experience for the national health system that we had after. Today, the situation is completely different. And Cuba is considered a reference in this sector. Yes. Then, as I was saying, that was the situation in 1959. Today, the situation is completely different. We have more than 97,000 doctors that covers 100% of our cities and vanish. That, of course, is include the whole rural areas. The infant mortality today is 4% per thousand live births, and in the first year. Life expectancy, 78 years for men and almost 81 for females. Existence of an immunization program covering 14 diseases in the first months of birth. That covers 100% of the population. We have 13 University of Medicine. We created the Latin American School of Medicine, first for Latin America and the Caribbean student, but after we increased it for all aspirants all over the world, including Indian students. So, as I said, the constitution, the old constitution of Cuba, and the new constitution that was approved last year contemplate health as a human right. It states that public health is a right of all persons, and it is the responsibility of the state to ensure the access, free status, quality of care, protection, and recuperation. The state has a health system at all levels, accessible to the population, and develops prevention and education program in which society and families contribute. Our health system is the result of Fidel Castro's strategic genius, whose fundamental axes are based on, first, I will say, will and political decision of the state. We have a very high percent of our GDP that is dedicated for health system. I would say that almost 60% of our GDP is dedicated for health, education, culture, and social security, among others important social sphere. The formation and development of human capital. That was one of the most important aspects that Cuba developed since the 1960s, 1 year after the Cuban Revolution, because that was the base to form the professionals that we need, but especially the professionals that we need for the health system. Fidel had a concept that the most important thing is life. The most important thing for human is life. But to maintain life, you have to develop a good health system. But at the same time, you have to develop a good education system that is able, that can prepare the doctors and the professional for this main activity. Another strategic point or axe on this health system is the institutional infrastructure and technology, the organization of the service, and of course, science, research, and innovation. Here I want to make a remark. All of you, I'm sure, remember that when the Soviet Union and the socialist countries fall, we had a very, very economic crisis. But including in that very bad situation, Fidel decided to develop in Cuba, I'm talking about in the 90s, to develop in Cuba the pharma and the biological industry as an important base for our health system. And he was right. We didn't have money perhaps to buy milk for our old Cubans or the children. But we had to develop that because that was strategic for our development. The principle of this Cuban system, of course, is its universal character. It's the free access, the regionalization of everything, the integral, and it's available to all citizens in the countryside, in the city, and to any political affiliation, race, sex, or religion, based on primary health care, fundamentally not only to cure, but to prevent diseases. We have today, for example, one of the most um, great problem, and that is that we have a very old population. Almost 22% of the Cubans, including of course me, we are over 60 years old, and of course we have these all numbers of population precisely because of the existence of our good health system. According to our health organization, the levels of attention.
Yeah, please continue, comrade. Please continue.
Yes, the levels of attention or our organization of the system is based at three levels. The first level and one of the most important is the consultories, what we name the doctors, the family doctors, into every part of the city. And with these doctors, family doctors, are the polyclinics. We have around 400, almost 450 polyclinics and circa 11,000 family consultories that care more than 20 specialties in this basic level. Then we have a second level, that is the hospital. The Cuban Revolution has been able to construct hospitals all over the country, and we have more than 150 hospitals with almost 39,000 beds. And the third level, that is the 13 Research Institute. All these three levels are interrelated for the care of our citizens. Another part that is very, very important that I mentioned before, that is the formation of human resources. Remember that we had only a national school before 1959. Today, we have almost a medical university in each province. 14 universities all over the island. 25 faculties of medical science with a faculty that there work more than 35,000 professors. We have a human resource in the healthcare sector over the 485, let's say, that is 4.8 lakhs workers and 97,000 doctors, as I said before. According to the data, we have one doctor per 118 Cubans, or 8.5 doctor per 1,000 Cuban. That gives us the privilege to care everyone with its diseases. The model of attention includes in our system the medical program of almost 60% of domestic production in the Cuban pharmaceutical and biotechnical industry. By the way, here in this sector, we have a very good cooperation with the pharmaceutical sector from India. We also have in our country, in the system, the development of national and traditional medicine, where now we are introducing also the cooperation directly with the Ministry of Ayush in India. That is the main point about the health system. And I will say another important point for our system, that is the health integral program. That includes, of course, the international cooperation all over the world. That is what we call the South-South cooperation, and where you know that we have been working this aspect since 1963, 3 years after the triumph of the revolution. Around these 58 years of cooperation, international cooperation, we have almost sent more than 400,000 Cuban specialists in 164 countries. Of course, we have big challenges. And I will say that one of the biggest challenge that we have, of course, now is the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, because we have to think not only in our country, we have to think also globally. We have to think in those countries and those populations all over the world that need the help in those sectors in which we are available to help with our international medical team in the last months as coronavirus disease appeared. And a second challenge that, of course, we cannot forget, that is the economic, commercial, and financial blockade imposed by the United States. If that was not a factor, we will be able to help more, to cooperate more. But that is a real issue. And finally, I want to also say there is another challenge, and that is that a group of Republican senators introduced a bill in June this year to punish countries that hire Cuban medical mission as conflict in the trafficking of persons. At the head of the accusation is Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The truth prevails in the face of avalanche of fake news about the true daily history of the Cuban doctors in the world. Social organization, political organization, trade unions, scientific personalities, and friends are claiming to the world that Cuban medical brigade facing COVID-19, like they faced before in Africa, very, very hard diseases, are truly worthy to the Nobel Peace Prize. With this information, I finish. I try to resume the strength of my government and the role of Fidel Castro in this important work. By the way, I want to, if you permit, I want to also thank all my friends here present and they are hearing the thanks to the solidarity of the people and friends of India since the beginning of the Cuban Revolution to our struggle, especially the struggle for the lift of the blockade. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Ambassador. And it was really like we have got a big glimpse of the Cuban healthcare system as well as the revolutionary efforts behind it by Comrade Fidel Castro and Comrade Che Guevara and the doctors themselves, the Cubans who have built this robust system of healthcare. Uh, Along with that, I mean, this information was very good, and there are some questions also in the chat box, but which we shall come to the questions later. And in between, I request Dr. Abhay Shukla to come and present. And after that, our technical host, Comrade Vivek Mehta, will play a short video of Comrade Fidel Castro expressing his views about the healthcare system. Thank you very much. So, Dr. Abhay Shukla, thanks very much, Comrade Ambassador, once again, and your political secretary, Comrade Juan Carlos, uh, who helped us in making this possible. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Dr. Abhay Shukla.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot. It's really a great privilege and very inspiring to hear Comrade Oscar Martinez's speech. And he has already spoken in so much detail about the Cuban health system that I'm not sure, how much I can add to that part. So before starting, I'd like to share a link of an article which I had written in 2016, which is titled Fidel Castro, a Champion of Public Health. I have put the link on the chat box. You can read it later. And this was just shortly after his death. And I had tried to note how Fidel Castro and the Cuban health system, which he led and nurtured over so many decades, has proven to be such a major and positive example for public health across the world for all countries, including India. So I think just a few points I'll add based on my own experiences of visiting Cuba and Venezuela in 2009 and observing and trying to understand the health systems there. And also, what are the lessons for India? And, a small island country so far away on the other side of the globe, still it has some really inspiring and very important lessons for India, I think. For our health systems. As a doctor, as a public health specialist, I'd like to, very briefly talk about that. So starting with Cuba's response to COVID, which has been quite significant and remarkable, and they have managed to contain the epidemic. So far as I understand, there are only 88 deaths in Cuba. And, testing was started very early. Cuba has an excellent record of controlling actually various communicable diseases. Dengue, meningitis, these are other issues which have been there in Cuba, but they have a very good testing and surveillance system, much better than the United States, for example, which has a much higher, per capita health spending. So that is why I think because they put in place a very rapid testing system, they were able to contain the Cuba epidemic so far. And as I understand, most of the cases are in Havana, and it has not really spread much to other parts of the island, and they have really. And besides this, Cuba has sent doctors during the COVID period to many other countries, including the Lombardy region of Italy. As you know, Italy was really badly affected, and it was the Cuban doctors who reached there. And I'll come to this later about this army of white coats, an army of peace and health, unlike other armies, which has been really Cuba's great international contribution. Hats off to Cuba and hats off to the Cuban health system and Cuban doctors. They have really shown an example of how health can be a major force of internationalism and international solidarity. So coming to the Cuban health system, Comrade Oscar has already mentioned so many points that I'd just like to mention a few, indicators which show us that how this small country, which is blockaded by the United States, which is under so much sanctions by the United States government since so many decades, has still managed to make such major advances in people's health. So the infant mortality rate in Cuba is 4 per thousand. In the United States, it is 6 per thousand. And in India, it is 30 per thousand. Now, this will give you some idea, where Cuba stands and, how it is reached there. And the life expectancy levels are more than 78.5 years per person in Cuba, which is comparable with the United States and almost a decade more than India. So people in Cuba live 1 decade longer than in India, despite the fact that the per capita, incomes and so on are comparable. Cuba is the first country in the world to eliminate mother-to-child transmission for HIV, which is really remarkable. HIV has been a significant issue in many Latin American countries, as you know, but Cuba has really managed to eliminate that. Cuba has managed to come out with many technical interventions, such as interferon alpha 2B to treat dengue. Dengue has been an issue there, but they really came out with a very advanced and I would say innovative treatment for dengue. And Cuba is the only country to have developed a vaccine for meningitis type B. Meningitis type B is a very fatal type of meningitis which affects children. India also has meningitis, but Cuba has come out with this kind of a vaccine. So where is this coming from? How is Cuba been able to achieve these remarkable, milestones in health? So as Comrade Oscar has already mentioned, I will not repeat what he has said, but we need to understand that the core is that health in Cuba is a political issue. And it is a top priority political issue for the leadership. And that is why Fidel Castro's contribution, and probably since the time of the revolution, Che Guevara's contribution. Che Guevara was a medical doctor, and he was probably one of the first examples of internationalism on that context, on that front. Being an Argentinian, he fought in Guatemala. He was living in Mexico when Fidel Castro recruited him. He came to Cuba. He helped to lead the Cuban Revolution. He went to Angola and Congo and fought in the Congo for the progressive forces. And finally, he was martyred in Bolivia. A truly international figure and really an inspiring figure. And he was also, among other things, also a doctor. And I think that, between Fidel and Che and their partnership in the Cuban Revolution, they really laid the foundations for making health a political issue, a top priority political issue. And that is something we need to learn in India, that health is not something peripheral. You look at what our political parties, how much importance do they give to health? And we are seeing the consequences in the COVID epidemic. Today, India has the 3rd largest number of COVID patients in the world. So this high priority to public health is very important in Cuba. And from that, everything else flows from that, actually. Universal health care, absolutely free health care for each and every person in the country at no cost. What a huge contrast with what we are seeing in India. Secondly, this is entirely based on public health. There is no private healthcare sector in Cuba. It's entirely the public health system which delivers everything. Contrast this what we see in India, where 70% of healthcare is you have to purchase it by paying from your pocket. So that is the second important feature. The third is primary healthcare, which already Comrade Oscar has mentioned. Family health teams and polyclinics, they are the base. So when I had visited Havana and we visited some of these clinics, it was very interesting to see practically every neighborhood has a family health clinic. There's a doctor, there's a nurse. They are living very close to the people. Cuba has 1 doctor for 160 people, which is 3 times more than per capita doctors in the United States of America, and 10 times more than almost in India. So they have so many doctors they have trained, which they have in each and every neighborhood. In fact, the Barrio Adentro program in Venezuela, which I had a chance to visit and also study, and which was essentially supported by Cuban doctors for a long period of time, was also basically partly modeled on the family healthcare, family clinic model of Cuba. So the third is primary healthcare. The fourth is community involvement. It's remarkable to see how people participate in public health programs. So when we were visiting, some of these communities, we saw, elderly people coming out in the morning for exercise. That is a health program. And is the health department which encourages people to exercise. People growing, having urban gardens to grow vegetables. That is also a contribution to health. Health is not just consuming medicines and vaccines. So doing exercise, eating healthy food, these are also, despite having a relatively low per capita income, being able to achieve such remarkable levels of health is because of also people's involvement, and people really support the Cuban health system. This is one thing which at least my strong impression. The fifth is appropriate technology. I've already mentioned some of those aspects. The meningitis vaccine, the medicine for dengue, some of the first in the world, the control of mother-to-child transmission of HIV. These are just some of the examples of how Cuba has really been in the forefront, even in medical technology. They are, continuously innovating, and they have a good scientific base and a strong, something like 500,000 health workers of different kinds whom they have trained, and including a very strong scientific cadre. The sixth is an intersectoral action. Health doesn't come from just medicines. Health comes from a wide variety of social determinants. It includes food security, it includes nutrition, it includes clean drinking water, sanitation, good environmental conditions, proper housing. And I could see that even in Havana, although, you could see that, there are almost no cars on the road. After going from India, I was surprised. Everybody was traveling by bus or walking, or in some cases on bicycle. There were almost no cars on the road. So I thought this is also a public health, something which influences public health. So there's no pollution. The air is clean because there are no cars. And, people walk because there are no cars. So a lot of people walk and bicycle. This is also something, which contributes to public health. Besides, of course, so many other aspects. And when the oil crisis took place, Cuba has been through a very difficult period in the 1990s. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, their entire economy was in a very difficult situation, but they recovered from that. They really remarkably recovered from that, because they were able to, really the entire population came together to face this crisis. It was not a simple period. It was a special period with great challenges, but they managed to overcome it. And one of the things that is to do with less oil, less petroleum, by bringing, so if people cannot travel to the health center will be close to the people. So the need for travel is reduced. The schools will be close to the people in every community, so that people don't have to send their children in, through transport to long distances. Such an interesting idea. So intersectoral action is also very important for health. And finally, international cooperation, which already Comrade Oscar has mentioned, and I have also briefly referred to that. When in Pakistan, when there was an earthquake, the first doctors to arrive were the Cuban doctors. And they went into the countryside, and the Pakistanis really welcomed them, and they said, like, your leader is like us. He also has a big beard. And, at that time, and they really did a remarkable job, in this. And now I'm quoting from the United Nations Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, So he's not like necessarily a votary of socialism, but what does he say about Cuban doctors? He says, Cuban doctors are the first to arrive and the last to leave. They arrive when the crisis strikes. They don't wait, they come, and they really do work in the most difficult situation. Then they're the last to leave. Cuban healthcare system is a model for many other countries in the world. So internationalism, socialist internationalism, but also public health internationalism is a core, I think, attribute of the Cuban health system, which we all should salute and try to emulate. So having said this about the Cuban health system, I'd like to briefly mention about what Cuba very remarkably did in Venezuela. Because I spent more time in Venezuela, because I wanted to see, okay, Cuba had a socialist revolution. So, okay, that is, one level of achievement. But what do you do in a capitalist country, which is trying to struggle to move towards socialism? And that example I saw in Venezuela, in the Barrio Adentro program. There's a lot which we can say about that, but I would just like to say that it was really the Cuban doctors which made a huge difference. Without the Cuban doctors, the Barrio Adentro program would not have been there in Venezuela. That is absolutely clear. And they really sent in doctors to each and every barrio. Means like a jhopadpatti, like an urban poor settlement, crowded, with poor people living there, informal sector, very difficult conditions. And the doctors went straight into the barrio. So people in the barrios had never seen a doctor in their community, in their entire life. The first doctor they saw was a Cuban doctor. He said, wow, upper middle class Venezuelan doctors would never go inside a barrio. So, and they went and they lived there. They didn't just go there. They went, and from day one, they started living there and working there and running the barrio adentro clinics. It was remarkable. And people used to fight over the Cuban doctors. Fight means in a friendly way. That used to say that, no, we want our doctor. We won't let him go or let her go. They did remarkable work in setting up the barrio adentro program, and also the innovative medical education system of both Cuba and also Venezuela is something really worth looking at. It's very different from our Indian medical education system, because what I saw in Venezuela, and it's based on the Cuban model, and ILAM, already Comrade Oscar has talked about the Latin American School for Public Health, which I have visited. And it was remarkable to see people from across Latin America, from Africa, and even from the United States. At that time, I think how they managed to come, I don't know, because of the blockade and all. But even there were students from the United States who said, we cannot afford a medical education in the United States, but Cuba is offering us free medical education. And, these young medical students from, I think, more than 70 countries across the world have studied in ILAM. And that medical education system is absolutely practical. It's not theoretical in the way that our Indian medical education system, for the first roughly 3 years, we mostly study theory. There is very little contact with patients. There from day one, medical students work with patients and in the clinic, and also, of course, undergo theoretical training. So that is, an important contribution of Cuba to the Venezuelan health system. So finally, what are the lessons for India? The first lesson is that public health must be a top political priority and a top social priority. If health is not a priority, then nothing can be done. And if health is a priority, then everything can be done. Cuba spends 883 rupees per capita on public health. India spends 19 rupees, 19. It's a 46-fold difference, So, I think if there's one thing which we should learn from Cuba is that we need to upscale public health spending, without which you cannot have a robust public health system. The second is that healthcare is a right. In Cuba, healthcare is a right for each and every person, and people can get it as a universal entitlement. We are still treating healthcare as a commodity. We have to move away from that model and really do a very different, have a public health rights model. The third is respect to health workers. This is also an interesting thing which I saw, and I also saw it in Venezuela. There is a lot of respect for health workers in Cuba, and people want to become doctors, people want to become nurses. I visited one clinic, and I saw a lady there and a young man there. So I asked this lady, who are you? She said, look, I was, my father, before the Cuban Revolution, was an agricultural laborer. And I got educated after the revolution. I have become a nurse. And my son, who is standing next to me, has in 3 generations, from an agricultural laborer to a doctor. You can see how the Cuban Revolution has encouraged people to become health workers and has really given them respect and support and training. It's really, that's another thing which we should probably learn from Cuba, and the spirit with which their doctors work. That is one of my final points. I was really impressed. In our country, doctors are usually quite commercialized in their approach. They're after making money, buying a bigger car, having a bigger house. I'm a doctor myself, but I'm sorry to say many of my colleagues are probably, more interested in, the material returns from their profession. But the Cuban doctors, really what I felt is that, there's something about their training itself which makes them, very much oriented to serving people. And you could really see this, that attitude that, our job is to serve, our job is to actually help people. And that itself is a huge return, which we get from our profession. I think if we are able to train doctors the way Cuban doctors are trained, it could really transform our health system. And we really have something to learn from Cuba about, how to educate, and how to train health workers and doctors. So, I will conclude here by saying that, Che Guevara is my lifelong hero. And of course, Fidel Castro. And Che Guevara has really been a huge inspiration for so many of us in the health movement since I was a medical student. We really need to learn from the Cuban health system. We need to both be inspired by it and also to draw the valuable lessons, and whatever we can do in our capacity to help Cuba, overcome this international blockade by the United States, which is a criminal blockade, which has snatched away so many things from the Cuban people. Cuba would have done 10 times more, if this blockade was not there. But despite that, they have done so much. That is really, really remarkable. And my hats off, and my appeal to all of you, do study about the Cuban health system. Just recently, a new book has been released in 2020. It's called Cuban Healthcare: The Ongoing Revolution. So there are two books which I would recommend. One is called Revolutionary Doctors, which is about the health system in Cuba and Venezuela. Very well written. And the other is Cuban Healthcare: The Ongoing Revolution by Don Fitz, which has just come out, and which is really a very, very good description of the Cuban health system and all its lessons and how they have overcome challenges. It's not that they did not have challenges. They had huge challenges, but they overcame those challenges through political will and popular mobilization, and a very clear vision of health and public health. So with these words, I thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abhay Shukla. And it is really remarkable to know the details of the Cuban healthcare system and the healthcare system which is being erected in Venezuela and other countries by Cuban doctors, and the approach which is taken towards the public health is something which people in India and people in the first world also won't be able to imagine. So thanks a lot. There has been many requests in the chat box to briefly translate it in Hindi as well. So I'll just quickly, just in 2-3 minutes, I'll take, and I'll try to put 2-3 points which you made. सबसे पहले तो अभय शुक्ला जी ने ये बताया कि जो क्यूबा है वहाँ पर 4 लोगों पर जो मॉर्टेलिटी रेट है, बच्चों का जो पैदा होने के वक्त मर जाने का रेट रहता है, वो क्यूबा में सिर्फ 100 पर 4 बच्चे मरते हैं। 1004 बच्चे की मौत होती है डिलीवरी के दौरान, और अमेरिका में 6 बच्चों की मौत होती है, भारत में 31 बच्चों की मौत हो जाती है। इसी के बारे में भी उन्होंने बताया कि वहाँ पर 78 से ज्यादा है उम्र, आमतौर पर जो लोग वहाँ जीते हैं उनको स्वस्थ है, जबकि भारत में 10 बरस होने के बाद
सॉरी पर किसी का स्पीकर ऑन है तो सुनाई नहीं पड़ रहा।
अब हेलो, हाँ, अपने माइक प्लीज म्यूट कर लीजिए। बाकी लोग जो वैक्सीन के क्षेत्र में क्यूबा ने काम किया है पब्लिक हेल्थ के सिस्टम के भीतर, वो रिमार्केबल है। उन्होंने HIV का, मेनिंजाइटिस के वैक्सीन्स निकाले, और आज हम देखते हैं कि कोविड-19 के दौर में वैक्सीन बनाने वाली कंपनियों के बीच मुनाफा कमाने की होड़ लगी हुई है। उन्होंने पाकिस्तान का एक जिक्र किया कि जब पाकिस्तान में अर्थक्वेक आया, भूकंप आया, तो सबसे पहले वहां पहुंचने वाले क्यूबन डॉक्टर्स थे, और उन्होंने वहां पर बहुत ही मदद का जो काम किया, उससे पाकिस्तान के लोगों की नजरों में क्यूबा के डॉक्टर्स की और फिडेल कास्ट्रो की इज्जत बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ी। उन्होंने बान की मून, जो यूनाइटेड नेशंस के संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ के महासचिव थे, उनका उदाहरण दिया कि क्यूबा के जो डॉक्टर्स होते हैं वो सबसे पहले आपदा के समय पहुंचते हैं और सबसे आखिर में वहां से हटते हैं। वो लगातार आपदाओं का मुकाबला करने में स्थानीय लोगों की मदद करते रहते हैं। हमारे साथ ब्राजील से भी कुछ साथी जुड़े हैं और नेपाल से भी, मैं उन सबका भी यहाँ स्वागत करता हूँ। उन्होंने ये भी बताया कि 70 से ज्यादा देशों में अभी क्यूबा के डॉक्टर्स अपने वो दे रहे हैं, सेवाएं दे रहे हैं। और उन्होंने वेनेजुएला में जो प्रोग्राम वहाँ पर क्यूबा की मदद से हेल्थ केयर का प्रोग्राम वहाँ चल रहा है, उसके भी अपने एक्सपीरियंसेस शेयर किए। और उन्होंने ये बताया कि जो प्रमुख बातें हैं, मैं पूरा रिपीट नहीं कर रहा हूँ, लेकिन कि हेल्थ केयर वर्कर्स को किस कदर वहां पर रिस्पेक्ट दी जाती है। एक उदाहरण उन्होंने बताया कि केवल 3 जनरेशंस के भीतर एक खेत मजदूर के घर में डॉक्टर वहां पर बन करके, जो नई पीढ़ी है उसमें डॉक्टर बने हैं लोग, और वो बहुत सम्मान पाते हैं क्यूबन हेल्थ केयर सिस्टम में जो काम करने वाले लोग हैं। उन्होंने 2 किताबों का हवाला दिया। वो किताबों का नाम मैं लेने के बजाय ये रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा उनसे कि वो उन किताबों के नाम चैट बॉक्स में लिख दें, और बहुत सारे साथी, many of our people are participants are asking for Comrade Oscar's and Dr. Abhay Shukla's presentations. So I will, you please leave your emails or WhatsApp numbers in the chat box. We shall certainly send the recording of this program, the link of the recording of this program, and the papers presented here should certainly be sent to you. So thank you very much. And I now request our technical host, Comrade Vivek Mehta, to play the video, which is the Fidel Castro's words about how the health should be seen in a human world.
Importante especie biológica está en riesgo de desaparecer.
Whoever is joining now, mute.
Progresiva liquidación de sus condiciones naturales de vida, el hombre. Ahora tomamos conciencia de este problema cuando casi es tarde para impedirlo. Es necesario señalar que las sociedades de consumo son los responsables fundamentales de la atroz destrucción del medio ambiente. Ellas nacieron de las antiguas metrópolis coloniales y de políticas imperiales, que a su vez engendraron el atraso y la pobreza que ellas azotan a la inmensa mayoría de la humanidad. Con solo el 20% de la población mundial, ellas consumen las 2/3 partes de los metales y las 3/4 partes de la energía que se produce en el mundo. Han envenenado los mares y ríos, han contaminado el aire, han debilitado y perforado la capa de ozono, han saturado la atmósfera de gases que alteran las condiciones climáticas, con efectos catastróficos que ya empezamos a padecer. Los bosques desaparecen, los desiertos se extienden, miles de millones de toneladas de tierra fértil van a parar cada año al mar. Numerosas especies se extinguen. La presión poblacional y la pobreza conducen a esfuerzos desesperados para sobrevivir aún a costa de la naturaleza. No es posible culpar de esto a los países del tercer mundo, colonias ayer, naciones explotadas y saqueadas hoy por un orden económico mundial injusto. La solución no puede ser impedir el desarrollo a los que más lo necesitan. Lo real es que todo lo que contribuya hoy al subdesarrollo y la pobreza constituye una violación flagrante de la ecología. Decenas de millones de hombres, mujeres y niños mueren cada año en el tercer mundo a consecuencia de esto, más que en cada una de las 2 guerras mundiales. El intercambio desigual, el proteccionismo y la deuda externa agreden la ecología y propician la destrucción del medio ambiente. Si se quiere salvar a la humanidad de esa autodestrucción, hay que distribuir mejor las riquezas y las tecnologías disponibles en el planeta. Menos lujo y menos despilfarro en unos pocos países para que haya menos pobreza y menos hambre en gran parte de la tierra. No más transferencias al tercer mundo de estilos de vida y hábitos de consumo que arruinan el medio ambiente. Hágase más racional la vida humana. Aplíquese un orden económico internacional justo. Utilícese toda la ciencia necesaria para el desarrollo sostenido sin contaminación. Páguese la deuda ecológica y no la deuda externa. Desaparezca el hambre y no el hombre. Cuando las supuestas amenazas del comunismo han desaparecido y no quedan ya pretextos para guerras frías, carreras armamentistas y gastos militares, ¿qué es lo que impide dedicar de inmediato esos recursos a promover el desarrollo del tercer mundo y combatir la amenaza de destrucción ecológica del planeta. Cesen los egoísmos, cesen los hegemonismos, cesen la insensibilidad, la irresponsabilidad y el engaño. Mañana será demasiado tarde para hacer lo que debimos haber hecho hace mucho tiempo. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Vivekji. Now before I invite the other speaker, I would like to know whether our comrade Sonia has come back. If she is there, then she should speak first, and then I will invite the other speaker. If comrade joined, I think she is.
I'm around. In fact, the
Okay.
Wi-Fi came back just as Comrade Ambassador started speaking. Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we are listening to you very clearly, and you are visible also, and it's nice to see you. And Comrade Oscar was telling that it is unfortunate that we could not listen to your opening remarks, but your in-between remarks will also be as important as the opening remarks. So please share.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I just want to, since a lot has already been spoken by people like the doctor and the ambassador himself, I just thought I would reflect upon the fact that how is it that Cuba has been able to build such a public health system which has been able to withstand these difficult challenges which have been mentioned by the ambassador and Dr. Shukla. I mean, how is it that despite this fierce economic blockade, which has hardened over the years, and also the special period, and today the pandemic, what is it at the core of the Cuban political and ethical project that has sustained the Cuban health professionals? Comrade Ambassador, it's nice to see you, and it was equally nice to hear you. I must also, kind of share my memories as Dr. Shukla has done on my visit to the ELAM, to the Latin American School of Medicine in my recent visit to Cuba. The surprising fact is that it was established in 1998. Cuba had just gone through a very difficult period, and as we know, it has been mentioned by the doctor that people from several countries, including the US, young men and women have found training there. I saw a question in the chat box, and perhaps somebody else can take it up in a bigger way. What is interesting about the Cuban healthcare system, the Cuban medicine, is that it is a holistic system. And somebody was asking if apart from allopathy, other things are also taught. And what I learned during my visit to the ELAM was that during the 6-year medical course, not only do they do modern medicine, that is allopathic, they also do 1-year training in homeopathy. And in fact, in the fight against corona, the Cuban doctors, who, as you know, go door to door, and doctor was saying that how it was so incredible for the Venezuelans to believe that doctors could come to their doorstep, while this is exactly how the doctors work in Cuba. So when the corona pandemic started, I forget the name of the medicine, but a homeopathic medicine was distributed as a preventive to the entire population by the doctors, by the family doctors. So it's a very interesting holistic system of medicine. Also, I know that Fidel himself, towards the later years of his life, had discovered, Cuba has, I have been translator to some medical missions which have come from Cuba in dialogue with our Ministry of Ayush, and they are particularly interested in traditional systems of medicine also, which are very strong in Cuba, considering that there is I suppose, the African system of traditional medicine, as well as the indigenous systems of medicine that existed and that exist in Latin America. And therefore, Fidel towards the end was had encouraged huge amount of moringa cultivation in moringa is this. I think our South Indian friends would know it. It's the drumstick, the sejal. In Hindi, it's called sejal. The leaves of the moringa trees, which we know in the south of India, I've lived 20 years in Hyderabad, they have got medicinal qualities, and towards I think now there is a major research on moringa in Cuba. So this is the kind of diversity that one came across, one read about it, but it was extremely interesting to see how a small country, a small island like that is investing not in superfluous and luxurious life styles for a few, or things which I don't want to compare India with Cuba in this moment, but we know that the contrasts in India are so huge. There are people who can be in 7-star hospitals like Medanta, and yet there are others who don't get any access at all. So what seemed very interesting to me also was this very dignified, frugal life which the Cubans live, and because of which they do not invest in superfluous, consumerist, luxurious items, and the national resources are available for service to all. And that's, I think, one reason why the Cuban health system has been able to sustain itself. But I think more than anything else, what has made the Cuban system, despite the sanction, why Cuba in the pandemic has been able to assume astronomical costs of modern medicines as well as nutrition and hospital stays for its people, is that we know that ever since the first case was detected from 11th March onwards, Cuba was able to put in place a national plan, and they have done huge amount of testing, screening, and their researchers, who are top class researchers, have been able to are working towards a vaccine. How has all this been possible is what I keep asking myself, and of course this webinar is all about it, the role of Comandante Fidel and Comandante Che as revolutionary thinkers who are at the core of imagining this entire revolutionary project. Because, and I would say, and this is what I'm going to end with, that the Cuban socialist project is at the core a humanist project. It's a revolutionary humanism that I think it's difficult to imagine until and unless you kind of start questioning, how is it that a small country is able to have the kind of figures which have been quoted by Ambassador and by Dr. Shukla. And and that is why I feel that it is this revolutionary humanism. Both Fidel and Che used to often quote Jose Marti, who, as you know, is the national hero of Cuba. And when they spoke about human dignity, so they used to quote Marti. And Marti had said that all true men must feel a sting when another man is slapped in the face. And this is exactly, I think, echoes Karl Marx, when he had said that the proletarian needs dignity more than bread. So I think this giving everybody a life of dignity is at the core of this humanist project. And Che felt that in order to build socialism, while strengthening the society's material foundations, you have to create a new man, or a new human being, a new man and a new woman. And I think commenting on Marx's humanism, he has written a biographical introduction it's called Marx and Engels, a biographical introduction. And in that introduction, Che also has written that about Marx, that he was such a humane man, that he had such an affection for humanity, and his affection extended to all those suffering throughout the world. And I think it is these ideals, this affection for humanity, which sustains the Cuban medical system, the kind of solidarity that the Cuban doctors extend to everybody. In this era of fake news, there had no dearth of mainstream media either completely having a blackout of Cuban medical contribution, or in fact calling the Cuban doctors slaves and so on and so forth. If you come from a capitalist system which is so perverse that it is based on a medicine which is only for profits, you cannot understand this radical humanist project. And I think if there is anything that we have to learn from Cuba, is first of all to be good human beings. And while we imagine a better world, I think that is why Cuba has been able to sustain its investment in health and education, because they believe in the creation of a new human being. And it is, which is what Marx had talked about, which is what Jose Marti had talked about. And it is this affection towards humanity that we see reflected in the Cuban health project. Thank you so much, Vineet, for allowing me to speak in between. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sonia, and to be with us. And everybody should know here that there are two women who are behind this to make this possible, today's program. One is you, of course, that who helped me in contacting the correct persons to speak. And another is our next speaker, Dr. Jaya Mehta, who actually brought this idea that this is the time when we should organize something about Cuban healthcare system, because nobody is talking about Cuba. And deliberately Kerala also is left behind. Even America is talking about Kerala, but in our own country we don't know that how Kerala took care of its own people. And to our Hindi knowing people who are with us, I will just briefly will take 1 minute to make out few points which you made. सो सोनिया ने यहाँ पर ये बताया कि सबसे बुनियादी बात ये है कि ये हुआ कैसे, ये इसके पीछे कौन सी वजह थी। आगे जो हुआ वो तो हम देख रहे हैं कि इतने सारे डॉक्टर्स हैं, और वो उन्होंने उसकी जड़ को, उसके रूट्स को ढूंढने के लिए उन्होंने कार्ल मार्क्स से लेकर के होसे मार्ती से होते हुए फिडेल कास्ट्रो और चे गुवेरा तक जो ह्यूमनिस्ट आइडियल्स आए हैं, जो रेडिकल ह्यूमनिज्म है, जो केवल इस तरह का मानवतावाद नहीं है कि जिसमें हम सब लोगों को गैर बराबर और बराबर लोगों को एक तरह से शांति से रहने का आह्वान करें, क्योंकि वो मुमकिन नहीं है, लेकिन वो बराबरी का है, वो सोशलिज्म प्रोजेक्ट के तहत हुआ। और उन्होंने कहा कि सबके कोर में ह्यूमन डिग्निटी, उन्होंने होसे मार्ती की जो वहाँ के प्रमुख कवि थे जिनको फिडेल कास्ट्रो बहुत याद करते थे, उन्होंने उनकी एक लाइन सुना करके कहा कि अगर किसी एक इंसान पर थप्पड़ पड़ता है तो बाकी सभी इंसानों पर उसका कुछ ना कुछ असर महसूस होना ये जरूरी है। ये इस तरह का जो ह्यूमनिज्म है, ये रेडिकल रिवोल्यूशनरी ह्यूमनिज्म है। और उन्होंने अपने उस वाकये को भी बताया कि 1998 में इलाम जो वहाँ का मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूट है वो बना था, जबकि क्यूबा बहुत ही बुरे आर्थिक संकटों और एम्बार्गो के दौर से गुजर रहा था। तमाम तरह के वैश्विक प्रतिबंध जो आज तक लगे हुए हैं वो उन प्रतिबंधों के दौर से गुजर रहा था। और उसके बाद भी उन्होंने अपने उस मेडिकल इंस्टीट्यूट को खड़ा किया, क्योंकि उनकी प्रायोरिटी में लोग थे, क्योंकि उनकी प्रायोरिटी में लोगों की अच्छी हेल्थ थी। और जैसा पिछले वक्ता ने हमारे कहा था, मैं उनका वो अंश छूट गया था जो सोनिया ने यहाँ पर फिर से दोहरा दिया, इसलिए कि न्यूट्रिशन, हेल्थ इज नॉट ओनली रिलेटेड टू द मेडिसिन। हेल्थ केवल मेडिसिन के साथ नहीं, बल्कि वो अच्छे पूरे के पूरे पोषण के साथ जुड़ी हुई एक बात है, और पूरे के पूरे माहौल के, सामाजिक माहौल के साथ जुड़ी हुई बात है। उन्होंने कहा कि कैसे लोग घरों पर जाते हैं, डॉक्टर से के घर पर जाकर के जब लोगों का इलाज करने जाते हैं तो लोग बिल्कुल अविश्वसनीय रूप से चकित रह जाते हैं। क्यूबा के डॉक्टर्स इस तरह से ख्याल रखते हैं लोगों का। और हम सब ने ये बात जो डॉक्टर शुक्ला ने भी कही थी और कॉमरेड सोनिया ने भी कही, और बाकी सब लोग हम यहाँ हैं, वो चाहते हैं कि जो इकोनॉमिक ब्लॉकेड है क्यूबा का, आज हम जब बात कर रहे हैं तो इसका भी रिजोल्यूशन होना चाहिए कि हम सब दुनिया में जो अमन पसंद लोग हैं, जो पीस के साथ में हैं, वो अपनी सॉलिडेरिटी क्यूबा के साथ दिखाएं और उस पर जिस तरह के प्रतिबंध लगाए हुए हैं उनको हटाया जाए। बहुत शुक्रिया सोनिया, थैंक यू वेरी मच, एंड इट वाज वेरी नाइस टू लिसन, एंड इट वाज रियली वेरी गुड स्पीच, थैंक यू। And now I request Dr. Jaya Mehta, who is an economist, and she'll speak about whatever she wants to, but the subject was given to her was political economy and putting education and health as priority in the political economy of Cuba. Yeah, thank you.
Begin? Yeah, I want to begin by expressing my very, very deep respect for Cuba and people of Cuba. And of course, Fidel and Che are our heroes, all of us have mentioned. But I also want to pay my respect to the present leadership of Cuba, to President Miguel Diaz-Canel, for carrying forward the legacy of Fidel Castro. After having said that, I will begin with what Abhay said. He said that lessons for India are that health should be given so much priority as it is being given in Cuba. And then it was again repeated that nutrition is a very important aspect of health. And if we want to give priority to health in India, we have to first look at nutrition in India. And since I'm an economist and I've done work on poverty study, I can tell you that 60% and 70% of Indian population does not get enough calories also. The minimum calories which are prescribed by ICMR, 2100 kilocalories per capita per day or 2400 kilocalories per capita per day for urban and rural population. 70% of the Indian population is not getting nutrition to be able to get that much calorie. So if we have a population which is undernourished to this extent, what kind of health priority can we think of? And if 70% of the population is undernourished, it is not just giving public distribution system and giving subsidy to food grains and giving food grains to people. If 70% of the population is undernourished, it means there is something wrong with the employment structure of the economy. There is something wrong with the political economy of India. And of course, the radical humanism that Sonia talked about and everybody talked about is something to be revered very much, but material things are important. And political economy of a socialist country has to be looked at and understood if you want to understand how Cuba has achieved what it has achieved. I'll begin with Fidel Castro, because when people talk of Cuban Revolution, people always say it was Fidel was not a socialist. He was not talking of socialism when the revolution came. He was I don't know. I mean, that is the general impression. There must be people here who know better than that. But he was only wanting to throw American empire, the military coup through which Batista had come, and he was talking about Cuban people electing their own leaders and Cuba being free and all those things which radical humanism can talk about. But when I was reading a speech of Fidel Castro which he gave in Central University of Venezuela, he was saying that he, as a student, he had read Marxism, and he had read Lenin, and he had read Communist Manifesto with great interest, and he was appreciating that how every sentence, every word in Communist Manifesto was written with so much of thought and carried so much meaning, because he said, I was a utopian socialist before I read Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto told me what socialism is all about. And then when he was talking about his arrest and his trial, he said that during the trial, when they arrested us, they found a book of Lenin in our place of hiding. And during the trial, they asked me that this book of Lenin was with you people. And I said, yes, it was there. We read it. And those who have not read Lenin are ignorant. Everybody must read Lenin to be able to have a better world and to be able to have a better civilization. So it is not that Cuban Revolution did not have a basis of Marxism, socialism. Of course, Fidel also said one more thing. He said Soviet Union was very impressed by Cuban Revolution, and the Soviet leadership said that we couldn't have imagined that such a small country just next to the biggest empire could have achieved this. And if we had gone to them for advice, probably they would have advised us not to try such a thing. It is good that we did not go to them for advice and did what we had to do. You know, it was not Soviet style socialism that he had in mind, but he definitely had scientific socialism in mind, and he had material production relations in mind, which would make a society what society he was dreaming of. Having said that, I will again say that history has only given us Soviet type socialist economies, which are called really existing socialist economies. And then what Chavez talked about, 21st century socialism, and Cuba is in between the Soviet type socialist economies and what Chavez was talking about. And the Soviet type socialist economies or post-revolutionary societies have been discussed a great deal in economic literature. And one very, very important aspect of the political economy of Soviet Union and East European countries that Paul Sweezy talked about was that these post-revolutionary societies are societies where surplus of the economy is used, is the decision regarding use of the surplus of the economy is taken politically. That means that you can, every economy, when it is growing and it is progressing, it produces surplus. But when it is a capitalist economy or a market economy, you don't have the choice how to use that surplus. And the post-revolutionary societies made a big progress that they took control of the surplus of the economy. It was no longer left to the market, and it could be politically decided how to use that surplus. So the first point that I want to make is that in a socialist economy, it is necessary that the surplus, how it is to be used, what is to be produced, what is to be invested for, is not to be decided by markets, but has to be decided politically. What mistakes the Soviet Union and East European economies made, or what mistakes can be made otherwise, is another matter. But the point is that you have a freedom, that you politically decide that you want to use the surplus of the economy in this manner. So Cuban leadership acquired that freedom to be able to use 60% of GDP for social security, health, education, culture, and whatever they thought is required for human civilization. The Cuban leadership and Cuban government does not leave the use of surplus to the dictatorship of market. So if it is a political economy of a socialist country, then it is necessary that you get freedom from the dictatorship of market. You get freedom from the objective, the sole objective of increasing your profit, and you think of what is needed for civilization. You think of what kind of a radical human being you want to produce, and you invest in those factors. Having said that, and just after the revolution, when Che Guevara was given charge of industry, and he also instituted land reforms, and after land reforms, he was in charge of industry, and then he was in charge of banking and finance. And basically, in the initial periods, he nationalized the sugar plantation of Cuba, the mining, because Cuba before revolution was completely under American capitalist control, and there were the main production in Cuba was sugar plantation and mining and tourism. So Che Guevara decided that if it is going to be a socialist economy, government has to take control and these things have to be nationalized. The banking was nationalized, industries were nationalized, and plantation was nationalized. But in 1965, Joan Robinson wrote an article, and when we are talking about Marxism, we talk about socialism as an intermediate stage between capitalism and communism, when you try to adjust and you try to change the consciousness so you reach a dream world which Marx had dreamt about. But between socialism and capitalism also there is a stage of adjustment as to when you nationalize various things and you don't have any experience of how to plan, how to coordinate, and you don't have enough manpower to run the industry which you have nationalized, you don't have enough manpower to look after the health facilities and education facilities, then there are mistakes and there are problems. And Joan Robinson had written in Cuba 65, that is in 1965, that the romanticism of having achieved revolution and having got free government and whatever is over, but now one has to get down to the basic and not so attractive details of how economy has to be adjusted. Now the point is that if a country like Russia or a country like China or even a country like India decides to switch over from capitalist economy to a socialist economy, takes control of production relations, takes control of productive forces, then the big countries have enough market space and have enough space of natural resources to be able to manage without external coordination and external linkages. But Cuba is not in that situation. So what Soviet Union could do, what Russia could do after Russian Revolution, what China could do after Chinese Revolution, for Cuba it is necessary to interact with the rest of the world. And if you have a possibility to interact with the rest of the world in a manner that there are other countries which subscribe to the system to which you subscribe, and you can interchange things and you can export and import and grow and develop, then it is easy. And being a member of CMEA, Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, being a member of Soviet bloc, in the initial stages, Cuba did progress a lot, did grow a lot, because these kind of external linkages and external support was possible, which is the necessity for a small economy like Cuba. And when Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 and Eastern Europe collapsed after the fall of Berlin Wall, at that time for Cuba to continue with its revolutionary legacy of socialism and for Fidel to insist that even if all these linkages are broken, Cuba will still survive, was an extraordinary feat, and for which one doesn't salute only Fidel and leadership, one salutes all Cubans, because from 1959 till 1991, Cuba had developed the radical humanism that Sonia was talking about. Cuba had won the ideological struggle to such an extent that the people of Cuba were ready to put up with all kinds of deprivation, but not give up the legacy of socialist political economy. And therefore, it has been mentioned again and again that during the special period, which they call during 90s, Cuba went through a very, very challenging time, but in those challenging times also health and education were preserved. The priority given to health and education was preserved, and with all kinds of deprivation, with strict rationing, nutrition was available to everyone. And even if motorized transport was not available, people were walking on foot, people were going on cycle, but people had a sense of participation that socialism, socialist revolution, it is their responsibility to carry it forward in this world, and they went through that special period with brilliant success, to which all of us offer a salute once more. And I think during his tenure, Fidel again and again talked about anti-imperial struggle. He again and again talked about unity of Africa, Asia, and Latin America. He again and again talked of third world unity, which has to struggle against imperialist countries, which has to struggle against the empire and have a world which is just, which is equitable, and where peace can be maintained. And Cuba's struggle after 91 till throughout the 90s, it reached a stage where Latin American countries, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, started turning towards a different alternative to capitalist dictatorship. And again, once more with Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, and to some extent Brazil and Argentina, Cuba got external support and possibility of exchange with other countries with similar politics and similar and aspiration to have similar economy. So I think the beginning of 21st century was a time when Cuba was no longer alone. It had friends in Latin America, and we looked forward to 21st century socialism. We looked forward to Chavez and Fidel together, giving us a new direction and our faith in an alternative to this horrible empire and capitalist system, that we can fight it, and in other countries also we can think of a civilization which is different. Civilization was restored during first decade of 21st century. Unfortunately, a situation has arisen where Cuba is alone again in Latin America, because the countries which were supporting and which had formed an exchange group with Cuba are no longer able to do it. And Venezuela is also under strict and horrible attack from US empire, and United States wants that Maduro should go, socialism in Cuba should go, socialism from Nicaragua should go, then Latin America will be free for the market and for America to enjoy all the gains of Latin America. We hope that such a situation will not come. And let me say a few things over here, that Cuba is forced to interact with capitalist world market because Cuba has to interact with world market. And if socialist world market is not available, and if it is forced to interact with capitalist world market, and we have to talk about sanctions of America, and we have to talk about other capitalist countries with which Cuba is interacting, and we have to talk about dollar as a currency which is required by Cuba, then Cuba has to make adjustments which will allow it to interact with other countries. Cuba has to make adjustments which will allow the basic needs of Cuban people to be fulfilled. And in that direction, I have read that Cuba is encouraging self-employment. Cuba is encouraging new cooperatives, urban cooperatives with small number of people, and Cuba is making adjustments for its survival. I think the radical humanism that we were all talking about will see to it that socialist legacy continues and the basic structure of socialist political economy continues, but there are threats. There are threats when you allow self-employment and you allow petty bourgeois. This is not what I am saying. This is what Raul Castro said in the political. I'm sorry, but in 1916, I think he said that when we are allowing petty bourgeoisie to develop to prosper in this country, it has a threat, because petty bourgeoisie doesn't have a socialist consciousness. It has a different kind of consciousness. So if material relations which are being forced on Cuba, because there are other socialist anchors are not available to Cuba, when these things are being forced, then it is challenging time for Cuba again, and a lot of courage and a lot of determination is required from Cuban people and Cuban leadership. But I also think that it is necessary that there are more Cubas, not just in Latin America, but also in Africa and in Asia, so that Cuba is not deprived of the support, and we have an exchange system, and we have a coalition where we fight with the empire and bring Fidel's dreams and Lenin's dreams to reality. Thank you.
All.
Thank you very much, Jaya, and it is really interesting to know the details of the political economy. संक्षेप में इसको बस 1 मिनट में ट्रांसलेट करने की कोशिश करता हूँ। हालांकि ये अपने आप में एक थोड़ा भी है कि पॉलिटिकल इकोनॉमी, फिर भी उन्होंने ये कहा कि जो सोशलिस्ट इकोनॉमीज होती हैं उनके भीतर सरप्लस जो जनरेट किया जाता है वहाँ के रहने वाले लोगों के द्वारा, उस सरप्लस का डिसीजन मार्केट से नहीं होता है, बल्कि उस सरप्लस का डिसीजन पॉलिटिक्स करती है उस देश के भीतर कि हम अपने लोगों के लिए इस सरप्लस का क्या उपयोग करेंगे। और उन्होंने बताया कि जब फिदेल कास्ट्रो ने क्यूबा में क्रांति की और उनके साथियों ने, तो वहां पर ऐसा नहीं था कि उनके दिमाग में पहले से कोई समाजवाद का नक्शा नहीं था। वो कम्युनिस्ट मैनिफेस्टो पढ़ चुके थे, लेनिन को पढ़ चुके थे, और उन्होंने आज़ादी के बाद में अपने सरप्लस का 60% हिस्सा हेल्थ, एजुकेशन और सोशल सेक्टर जैसी चीज़ों पर लगाया, अपने लोगों को ताकतवर बनाने के लिए, सक्षम बनाने के लिए लगाया। जब क्यूबा में क्रांति हुई उसके पहले तक केवल शुगर केन और माइनिंग की ही, मतलब गन्ने की खेती और खनन की इंडस्ट्री हुआ करती थी, लेकिन उस इंडस्ट्री को उन्होंने आगे बढ़ाया। और फिर उन्होंने जॉन रॉबिन्सन का एक उल्लेख किया, जो जिनकी किताब थी क्यूबा 1965, जिसके भीतर उन्होंने इस बात की तरफ इशारा किया था कि कैसे क्यूबा को इस पूरे इम्पीरियलिस्ट सिस्टम के साथ में अपने आप को आगे बढ़ाना होगा। और उन्होंने एक्सटर्नल लिंकेजेस की बात की, क्योंकि उन्होंने कहा रशिया और चाइना में जो क्रांतियां हुई थी वो इतने बड़े मुल्क थे कि उनके भीतर से ही उनकी जरूरतों की पूर्ति की जा सकती थी, लेकिन क्यूबा एक बहुत अलग किस्म का, एक बहुत छोटा सा देश था जिसके पास इतने संसाधन नहीं थे। लेकिन उन्होंने, क्यूबा ने एक्सटर्नल लिंकेजेस बनाए और एक अलग वर्ल्ड की, एक अलग दुनिया की उन्होंने सोच रखी सामने। और CMEA का उल्लेख किया, उसका पूरा मैं फुल फॉर्म भूल गया हूँ, लेकिन एक इस तरह का ब्लॉक था जो दुनिया के पूंजीवाद विरोधी देशों के और समाजवादी देशों के आपस में एक्सचेंज करने के सिस्टम्स क्रिएट किए गए। उन्होंने 1989 में फिदेल कास्ट्रो की उस स्पीच को याद किया जब बर्लिन वॉल गिर चुकी थी, यानी जो समाजवादी जर्मनी का जो समाजवादी हिस्सा था वो ढह चुका था वहाँ समाजवाद। और बाद में 91 में रशिया से भी मदद बंद हो गई थी, USSR के भीतर भी समाजवाद खत्म हो गया था। तब भी फिदेल कास्ट्रो ने कहा कि अगर कोई भी दुनिया में और मुल्क ना बचे जहां समाजवाद की व्यवस्था रहे, तब भी क्यूबा समाजवाद के रास्ते पर आगे बढ़ेगा। और उसकी एक बुनियादी वजह थी, उसकी एक ठोस वजह ये थी कि 1959 से जब से क्यूबा में क्रांति हुई थी, तब से 1991 तक आते आते फिदेल कास्ट्रो ने अपने जैसा डिटर्मिनेशन क्यूबा के हर व्यक्ति के भीतर पैदा कर दिया था। और उन्होंने 21st सेंचुरी सोशलिज्म के बारे में ये कहा कि वेनेजुएला, बोलीविया और इक्वेडोर जैसे देश, जहाँ पर कि एक नए दुनिया की, जो पूंजीवाद की दुनिया नहीं होगी, एक वैकल्पिक दुनिया की अवधारणा के साथ वहाँ पर सत्ताएं बनी। और जो लोगों के साथ दोस्ताना और हमदर्दी का व्यवहार रखने वाली सत्ताएं थी वो बनी। आज के दौर में उन सत्ताओं को फिर से अमेरिकी षड्यंत्रों की वजह से गिरा दिया गया है, लेकिन और अमेरिका ये चाहता है कि वो सारी सत्ताएं वहां ध्वस्त हो जाएं और फिर से उसके लिए एक पिकनिक का ग्राउंड की तरह से और शोषण की जगह के तौर पर क्यूबा का इस्तेमाल किया जाए। लेकिन उन्होंने इस तरफ भी इशारा किया कि क्यूबा जैसे मुल्क केवल एक नहीं होंगे। हम उम्मीद करते हैं, जो फिदेल कास्ट्रो सोचते थे कि तीसरी दुनिया के देशों के भीतर एकजुटता कायम हो, एशिया में भी क्यूबा बने और लैटिन अमेरिका का क्यूबा जो है केवल लैटिन अमेरिका तक सीमित ना रहे और वो एशिया और अफ्रीका के भीतर भी अनेक क्यूबा जैसे देश बन करके उभरें। तब हम इस एम्पायर के खिलाफ एक मुकम्मल और फैसला कुन लड़ाई की तरफ बढ़ सकते हैं। उन्होंने बीच में जो आज के दौर के भीतर समस्याएं क्यूबा की इकोनॉमी के भीतर आ रही हैं उनकी तरफ इशारा किया और राउल कास्त्रो की 1960 की स्पीच को भी याद किया कि कैसे पैटी बुर्जुआजी का बनने देना एक क्यूबा जैसे समाज के भीतर कुछ थ्रेट्स पैदा कर सकता है, जिसकी तरफ क्यूबा के लीडर्स का ध्यान है और वो इसे बनने से रोकेंगे। उन्होंने आज के दौर के क्यूबा के राष्ट्रपति और जो लीडर्स हैं उनको भी याद किया और उन्होंने कहा कि मैं फिदेल और चे के साथ में आज जो क्यूबा की लीडरशिप है और क्यूबा के लोग हैं उनको अपना सलाम पेश करती हूँ, क्योंकि ये लोग ही हैं जो सोशलिज्म की लेगेसी को, उस बड़ी जिम्मेदारी को और उस बड़े इतिहास को आगे लेकर के जा रहे हैं। शुक्रिया जया। और एक सूचना, देयर इज वन मोर इंफॉर्मेशन इन द चैट बॉक्स फ्रॉम आवर नेपाल फ्रेंड उषा तितिक्षु. She has said that she is live streaming it on her Facebook page and people are watching from various countries, Finland, Brazil and some other countries she mentioned. It is written in the chat box, so please have a look at that too. And we are also live streaming it on All India People Peace and Solidarity Organization's Facebook page, where it is seen by many people, and it is also live streamed with other two Zoom channels. And I think, hello, yes, and I think that this voice of Fidel Castro is necessarily to be taken to the people, and people would understand that what is the difference between Cuba and America, or the Cuba and the capitalist world. And here I stop and I request Comrade Vivek Mehta to play a 3-minute video which is again words of Fidel Castro and which are energizing words of Fidel Castro. Please, Comrade Vivek Mehta ji, please. Hello, Comrade Vivek.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, thank you. Please mute yourself, whoever is speaking on mic, please.
Nuestro país no posee armas nucleares, ni armas químicas, ni armas biológicas. La decena de miles de científicos con que cuenta nuestro país y sus médicos han sido educados en la idea de salvar vidas. Estaría en absoluta contradicción con su concepción poner un científico o un médico a producir sustancias o bacterias o virus capaces de producir la muerte a otros seres humanos. En nuestro país se hacen investigaciones para curar enfermedades tan duras como la meningitis meningocócica, la hepatitis a través de vacunas que produce a través de técnicas de ingeniería genética, o algo de suma importancia, la búsqueda de vacunas o de fórmulas terapéuticas a través de la inmunología molecular. Perdónenme si he empleado esta palabra técnica, quiere decir a través de métodos que atacan directamente las células malignas Y lo mismo, unas pueden prever y otras pueden incluso curar, y avanzamos por esos caminos. Y ese es el orgullo de nuestros médicos y de nuestros centros de investigación. Decenas de miles de médicos cubanos han prestado servicio internacionalista en los lugares más apartados e inhóspitos. Un día dije que nosotros no podíamos ni enviaríamos nunca realizaríamos ataques preventivos y sorpresivos contra ningún oscuro rincón del mundo, pero que en cambio nuestro país era capaz de enviar los médicos que se necesiten a los más oscuros rincones del mundo. Médicos y no bombas, médicos y no armas inteligentes de certera puntería, porque al fin y al cabo un arma que mata traicioneramente no es absolutamente un arma inteligente.
Thank you very much, Vivekji. This is very inspiring speech of very short, inspiring speech of Comrade Fidel Castro. मैं केवल इतना ही हिंदी में बताऊंगा अपने साथियों को कि उन्होंने कहा कि हम डॉक्टर्स भेजेंगे दूसरे मुल्कों, बम नहीं भेजेंगे, और बम जो है वो कोई इंटेलिजेंट, कोई बुद्धिमान वो नहीं है मानवता के लिए सर्व करने का. हमारे डॉक्टर्स जो हैं वही एक हथियार होंगे जो हथियार शोषण को समाप्त करेंगे, अत्याचारों को समाप्त. तो केवल डॉक्टर्स वर नॉट ओनली यूज्ड or doctors were not only were serving the medical things and medical requirements, but they were also making bridges of humanity, which our speakers have been talking about. And our next speaker, we were expecting Dr. Arun Mitra to join us, who is a practicing doctor from Ludhiana, Punjab. But as I told you that one of his staff was found COVID positive today afternoon, so he is not with us. But Dr. Nara Singh from Manipur has joined us from Indian Doctors for Peace and Development. This is an organization which works like Cuban doctors to some extent, which takes inspiration from the kind of system which has been created by Cuba. And Dr. Nara Singh has served as minister also in the state government, and he is a practicing doctor as well, and he has visited many countries studying the healthcare system. I would like to invite him for his brief comments on today's presentation. Dr. Nara Singh.
Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, I would like to congratulate Comrade Pallab Sen, FSHO General Secretary, and the IDPD for having taken this task. And I would also like to express our solidarity with the people of Cuba. We people from the northeast, far up and the remote area of India, we would like to express our solidarity with the people of Cuba. Comrade Oscar Martinez. Well, with community-based polyclinics as its centerpiece, the Cuba public health system has provided inviolable results as it continues to adapt at new changes. By many standards, it is the world's most effective and the unique system. I don't want to repeat many things which has already been spoken because time constraint. I know many speakers are there and they would like to express their feelings, that want to take their shares also. Now, as we discussed, what I felt, you see, I was in the special period of Cuba those days in 1992. And I have experienced the agony, the problems which the people of Cuba faced during those days. And in those days, when in the country, you may remember, you can recollect how the political parties, the left parties organized wheat. You know, Cuba was starving practically. So we people, even we took share from our own small state, and people were asked to donate. We collected money. And with that, the whole country bought 10,000 metric tons of wheat for Cuba. Food against blockade was the slogan. And those days, I was there in Cuba. When I narrated what we have been doing in India, the people, the elderly people shed tears. They embraced me. And that was the situation. Anyway, during the first visit, because I was minister in charge of the animal husbandry, you know, very encouraging news. Perhaps all of you are aware of the fact that Cuba produced the best and highest milking cow in the world. You know, hardly in the country, the cows which can deliver 40, 50 liters of milk every day is very rare. In the NDDB, National Dairy Development Board in Amul area, I have seen 46 liters a day was the highest. But when I found which country has got the highest milking cow, luckily I found from the Guinness Book of World Records that Cuba has the highest milking cow. And that cow gives 110 liters of milk every day. How it was produced? You know, Comrade Janusha, who happened to be the advisor to the Ministry of Agriculture, he took me to the offices, to the farms, and he was telling, and the experts were narrating how this had happened. You see, Fidel Castro was the man again. When we talk about the public health, health of the people, the nutrition was at the back. What Fidel understood, he said, the health of the children, the priority is to be given to the children's health. So nutrition, then he said, nutrition, the best food for the children is the milk. Milk is a complete food. So he promised that he would provide 1 liter of milk to every child of Cuba daily. And in order to do that, he appealed to the scientists, the veterinarians and the general scientists to produce more milk. So they took a project started in 1966. Within 1 decade, means within 10 years, it was completed. You see, Cuba could produce 12 new varieties of cows. The best 2 varieties were Siboney and Mambi varieties. I was taught with the farms, the cows and bulls, everything. I would like to shorten it. But it is necessary to pass on this message, how Cuba could make the cows, the new cows in the world that gives highest milking cow, 110 liters of milk. The name of the cow is Yubra Blanca. Perhaps you have already understood or through the general knowledge. See, about the healthcare system, Ambassador has also explained, and Sonia has also pointed out about the American students in Cuba, ILAM, that Latin American Institute, Medical Institute. It is in Havana. I have visited that institute. When I went there, I found many students from different countries, including some students from USA. I was a little bit surprised. How could they come? And they explained there is an organization in USA. It's a religion based, means Pastors for Peace. So that organization recommended students from USA, those who are willing to study medicine in Cuba. So they were selected and they came through Mexico or through Canada and they reached Cuba. And the Cuban government gave them free medical education. This is how it's interesting. And you know, whatever the achievements Cuba has made, now I don't know whether you have heard about one project that is called Operation Miracle. Operation Miracle, and which was an idea of Fidel Castro also. That means Cuba tried to provide free medical care and operations for the blind people of the world. So it started, and that was in 2007 when I was going there for second visit. They said already 13 lakh people have been benefited from different countries, free treatment in Cuba. Cuba has got a very good news, that is on orthopedic. You see, the world's biggest orthopedic hospital is in Havana. They call it Frank Pies Orthopedic Hospital. I have the privilege of seeing that institute also. What I mean is, such a small country which has been able to bring out and to produce so many new things. Now, when we go to Cuba for the healthcare delivery system, they have basically community-based polyclinics, as already said. Every 160 houses, there is a family doctor, a nurse, and they have to be along with the people. Everybody is friend of the family doctor. So they take care. So right from the very basic ground up to the highest level. So 3 tiers already explained. So I have seen the first, second, and third stages of their medical achievements. You see, even hepatitis B, the vaccine was invented by the Cubans. So likewise, now whatever is going on, when the natural calamities took place, it is the Cuban doctors, whether it is in Pakistan or in Haiti, anywhere else. In 2011, when I invited the then Cuban ambassador in India, Ramirez Ramos, he came to Manipur. We received and we organized lectures in the Manipur University. And when he narrated about the achievements of the Cuban doctors and their services, and the press people were asking how much money a Cuban doctor gets. I mean, the salaries of the Cuban doctors. The ambassador, he politely and very decently answered, Cuban doctors do not work for salaries. We work for the people. And that has silenced everybody. So this is how they have achieved. And many more things are coming up. Now, with all these, I think such kind of discussions will have to be organized frequently. You know, nowadays the press, media people also do not cover much of the programs of the Cuba or the left party's achievements or the Kerala government, all that everybody knows. But it is we who will have to talk. We have to continue discussing. We have to make the people known. So this particular program of this evening, I think this will pave the way for the future deliberations and discussions, and the information's transaction will have to take place like this. So I think I should not take much of your time. Many more people are waiting for their time. I think I should come. Thank you very much.
And you talked about some things which were not known to us, all our participants. उन्होंने बताया कि वर्ल्ड का सबसे बड़ा जो ऑर्थोपेडिक अस्पताल है वो हवाना में है. उन्होंने बताया कि ऑपरेशन मिरेकल जो 2007 में शुरू किया था वो उसने दुनिया के सभी.
Yeah, it started in 2004. What I mean is I came across in 2007. And one thing I would like to add, when Mr. W. Bush, the former president of America, having not been able to tolerate the image of Cuba increasing, he declared openly that destroy Cuban system of medicine. You know, those days, Fidel Castro was in the hospital. Every week in his reflections, you know what he said? Mr. Bush, you cannot kill ideas. What America cannot do, Cuba can do it.
Thank you once again, comrade. And I think if you have some paper or if you can write something about this, what you mentioned in your speech, please share with us. We will try to propagate and send it to many others. And small information that we are live from 24 Facebook pages, and some people are hosting the watch party, and we hope that we are reaching to many more people and then only who are here. So I again thank you very much. I will take just one or two brief questions if there are any, because the time is not permitting us, and I think that Comrade Pallab Sen Gupta will take some time on elaborating on the issues which has been discussed. So please, if 1 or 2 minutes question somebody can raise, which may not be answered here in detail, but we will certainly try to get the answers delivered to your email box or your WhatsApp box. So please, if there are any questions, one can tell. Comrade Sonia already responded to one question, that are there allopathy system only or other systems are also functioning?
Yes, homeopathy has been accepted by the Cuban government.
Comrade, I'm asking.
Yes.
I'm inviting questions if there are any.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will request Comrade Pallab Sen Gupta to conclude this meeting with his remarks, and I thank you all for sitting too long and being with us, and you joined this meeting, and we hope that we will continue hosting such meetings, and maybe we will keep it on agenda. Maya is asking one question, but very briefly, Maya, please. Yeah. You can turn on your mic and then speak.
Cuba in many countries. Recently, few more knowledge has come that the test for corona itself is not that reliable.
Sorry, Maya, your voice is breaking.
Can you hear me?
We cannot.
Can you hear me now?
You please leave your question in the chat box. I'll tell this to the.
I mean, right in the beginning, I have when Mr. Shukla was speaking. That time I had kept it. If you can find out, can you?
No,
we can't hear. We can't hear it properly.
Make sense of the.
Hello.
Hello. You please drop the question in the chat box, and I'll get the answers from our speakers, and I'll send the relevant answer to you. Sorry, Maya. I request Comrade Pallab to unmute your mic and please make your concluding remarks. So
I have already unmuted.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks all the participants who are participating in this virtual meeting dedicated to the role of Comrade Fidel Castro and Che Guevara in developing one of the best health system in the world, that is in Cuba. I really appreciate the speech of our friend, our Excellency, Comrade Ambassador, then also our friends, Dr. Shukla, Jayaji, or Sonia, and all others. They really cover all aspects of the health system. I will not go to in that details. I just wanted to say what Sonia emphasized. I also wanted to say that how Cuba could survive when a giant country like Soviet Union could collapse and other socialist countries in Europe, East Europe collapsed. How a small country, 91 kilometers away from the United States, could withstand today with its head high. I had been in Cuba 9 times from 1979. I had the opportunity to meet Comrade Fidel 3 times, and once almost one-to-one to discuss the issue of organizing World Youth Festival in Havana in 1997. And moreover, with Cuba, we have a very good political relations, and we could exchange our information with them. So we know what actually going on. But here I just wanted to emphasize that Cuban socialist system is bit different than other socialist countries in the past. And that is what I never seen the bureaucracy could hijack the party or the government like other socialist countries in Cuba. In Cuba, everywhere in decision-making process, the Communist Party was a party which never been challenged by its own people. There can be criticism, but it's never challenged its authority, because the Communist Party of Cuba, government of Cuba, always close to the masses, and the participation of the people in the decision-making process should be highlighted when we are discussing about the achievement of socialist Cuba. Just take an example. Just 2 years before they started to draft new constitution, millions of amendment is there. Millions of amendments is there. And it shows the readiness of the people to support, to upgrade their present system. But not a single, amendment was there against the system. But it was supporting the system, which is very close to the people. And for this reason, I said, it is the political will, political position, and trust on the people, which help to withstand all this imperialist pressure, sanction, and all the attempts from the reaction to kill Comrade Fidel Castro and to destroy the socialism in Cuba. So today, while we are appreciating the healthcare system in Cuba, it should not be isolated from the political position of the Cuba, the government running by which political force, which tendency, and how they reach to the people. So this is important because COVID-19 has proved its historical limit to address the people's health. And I think here is the alternative which shows us that is the Cuban health system can be treated as an alternative to the present capitalist system and its health policy. So I agree with Dr. Shukla that it will be the lessons for us. If we want to draw the lesson from Cuba, the first lesson will be that as a peace movement, we have to connect it, our struggle with the struggle for universal health. Health should be a right, not a privilege. Healthcare should be a right, not a privilege. And the budget for the healthcare has to be more and more than to building arms and purchasing arms. Fidel said always that America send the bomb and we send the doctor. And I think Comrade Abhay Shukla mentioned it, but then he forgot about to tell, because generally it was known as an army of white cloth. Because this is the difference between a khaki clad army with the white cloth army. ones are killing the people and others army is just going. 158 countries, 300,000 doctors went from Cuba, different part of the world, just to save the life of the Cuba. So I just wanted to thank once again that not only take as a different issue of health than the main political objective of Cuban people, Cuban party, and Cuban government, that is developing more and more the socialist renewal and socialist objectives to the whole world. And when we are appreciating Cuba's role, when we are appreciating Cuba's health system, we should not forget that Cuba also stand with us, and we have to stand with Cuba. We have seen in Pakistan, Dr. Shukla mentioned it, the first brigade, even without any invitation, I was told by the Cuban authority, it was Fidel who asked, go there, then we will see. Then just they informed the Pakistan authority that we are coming. They came, they stay there, and they prove that what they can serve to the people. So, comrade, I think that when we are listening all this good speech, it was a very good initiative. From our side, I want to thank Comrade Vinit and Comrade Joyadi for their understanding and their initiative. APSO, always guided by the, legacy of Comrade Ramesh Chandra. Ramesh Chandra was always saying, Cuba stand for the world, so world stand for the Cuba. And we can say very proudly, AIPSO from its inception supported the National Liberation Movement, supported the Cuban struggle, till we are with Cuba and we will remain Cuba. So this is the message I wanted to give you on behalf of the All India Peace and Solidarity Organization. Thank you, comrade, for all of your participation in this virtual meeting.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much, Comrade Pallab Sen Gupta, for your putting together all the thoughts and bringing the politics at the center, whether it is education or whether it is social care or health. There are some questions in the chat box. I will just mention them, and I hope that our Cuban friends will help us in because people are interested. One question is that, are there Cuban films available in English? So if there are, please help and please share with us so that we can send it to many. Then there is a question regarding that zero survey test which has taken place in many of the countries and in India as well. It says that only 0.1% is the fatality rate. So what is the Cuban scientists' take on it? I requested yesterday our Cuban comrades to respond to this, but they sent, because it was at the last moment, so they sent us some material in Spanish, which our comrade Sonia is going through, and we will respond to you in your email, or we will share it when she translates or she makes a gist of it. Then there is a question.
Vinit, I think Comrade Ambassador wanted to say something.
Yes,
Yeah, I'll just come to that. I'll just come to you. Just I'm mentioning so that nothing is left out. So in between this thing also came up that yes, we should pay our somebody suggested, and it is more than welcome, and that we pay our sincere condolences to all those who lost their lives in this COVID time, and we hope that other who are suffering with this disease will get over soon. And yes, of course, COVID-19 vaccine is being tried out in various countries, including Cuba. Comrade Ambassador, you are most welcome to say.
yes. First of all, thank you again for this meeting, this discussion. I am very impressed by this debate, inspired, and at the same time proud of what you have remarked. Many of you has asked why it is Cuba possible to do all what we have done. And if you permit me, I have written here 7 or 8 reasons in words. So you can please think about it. One of the main reasons is that we had Fidel, and we still have his legacy.
Yes.
That is reason number 1. Reason number 2, because we have created a socialist system, and the center of attention of this system is the human being. Number 2. Number 3, I will say we are a poor country, but the little resources we concentrated to give all what they need. Number 4, we have a continuity in the implementation of program of our system. That means today, 5 years, we do this, and then when another comes, we do something else. No, we implement always the programs. Number 5, I would say we have a national political conscience. That is for us important. Number 6, the people of Cuba has unity.
Somebody else is speaking simultaneously. I request you to stop for a second and then continue.
Yes, continue.
Yeah, please.
Yes, number 6, I will say that we have unity with our process, with the leader of the revolution, beginning with Fidel. Number 7, we have also unity in the way of acting toward adversities. Let's say any kind of adversity. Number 8, the important role of solidarity that we receive, but we also give. And number 9, I will say we have a government of the people, to the people, and with the people. That is the main reason. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have just 2 minutes, so I thank everybody here. I cannot name everyone who has made this meeting successful, including our National Secretary of EPSO, Comrade Arvind Porwal, and all the speakers who came. A special thanks to the Cuban Embassy to cooperate with us. And also we were joined with members of Saturday Free School, Philadelphia, from United States of America, and they were also broadcasting it on their channels. So I really thank them all. From Nepal, our friends have joined, from Sri Lanka, Brazil, Finland, whoever have joined. I am thankful to all those people who made this meeting successful. Thank you, Comrade Pallab Sen Gupta. And on behalf of EPSO, IDPD, and Joshi Adhikari Institute of Social Studies, I thank you all once again.